Peace. I wanted to make a video blog and talk about spirituality and talk about native spirituality because I live out in the plains right now and I feel like I've been feeling this feeling of connectedness with the land, with the sacred landscape. And I know that there is definitely an energy and a spirit out here, just everywhere. And it's an amazing thing, it's really an amazing thing because I have felt this a long time ago. Matter of fact, when I first moved to Boulder many years ago, I experienced this, but then I lost it for a very long time. And then when I moved back to Boulder, the few times I moved back to Boulder, I didn't feel it as much. And I think it's because I was so socially tied into the fabric of society that I didn't notice it. But this time around, I'm more, reclusive. I'm more like a hermit. I'm more like in my own little world right now. And I'm really receptive to this cosmic, energy, this force in nature that I've been feeling. I'm just open to it more now. And also, as I get older, I'm accepting my baton, my alone time by myself. I accepted more my introversion. I don't think I quite accepted it as much years ago, but I think as I get older, I'm accepting it more so now. And I think that that is prompting me to be more open spiritually to this cosmic force. So that being said, I want to talk about like these really quick, these three books that I have written by the same guy. Um, and if you see them, it's all based on the teachings of a Native American chief named White Eagle, who supposedly had, all this wisdom and written all this stuff, but he was also a politician as well. I don't know that much about him. It's hard to find a lot of information on him and everything, but I know that the guy that wrote this books is an English guy that started this theology in England, and basically he said he was inspired by the teachings of this long dead Native American chief named White Eagle, who had all this, wisdom to give to the world. And so basically, he said that he dictated it to him, and so he put it on a book. I don't know if that story is true, but all I do know is these books are amazing. They are amazing because they are so simplistic, and they're all based on. Some of them are based on Christianity, like this one's about Jesus. But the way he writes about Jesus, he writes about the cosmic Christ. So he doesn't write about the Jesus we know in the Bible or Jesus in theology or divinity or evangelical circles. He writes about the cosmic Jesus. He writes about the Native American Jesus. And this book alone would blow your mind. It's just so amazing. It just, in a way, made me fall in love with Jesus again. I'm not hopping on Christianity or any religion. I'm just saying that's just one book. But this book, The Golden Harvest, it's really, if you can see, it's called The Golden Harvest. It's really, really super amazing. And this is, I'm feeling in tune with this book more so now because it's tied into like nature and like the harvest of gathering this energy, this healing energy, this all around, this in the sky, this in the air, this in the water, this all over and everything. Um, and it's pretty amazing and everything. And this other book is called The Spiritual Unfoldment. This is the second one. I have the first one too. But basically, it's about how we. If you look at the picture. It's amazing. It's pretty awesome. The jacket cover. And it just gets into it, man. It gets into like what we're kind of missing in our lives without being judgmental, without being dualistic. And what I mean by without being dualistic, it's not saying like a lot of times teaching, especially like in Buddhism and Zen, it would say, well, the reason why you're like this is because of this. And I think that's really odd considering Buddhism is supposed to be a non-dualistic religion, but a lot of times the premise is always the opposite, the reaction, so on and so forth and everything. And I like to, if I'm going to engage in a spirituality, I want that spirituality to be non-dualistic. I don't want it to be, well, the reason why you're like this is because of this. Because being a gypsy, being a traveler, I notice that that never works whenever you blame something for if you get something new. In other words, like say when I was living in Denver, there's so much stuff I could have said about Denver that I went through when I was living in Denver that prompted me to move out of Denver. But it was pointless for me to mention it in the video blog. I could have made a video blog and be like, well, this is the reason why I moved to Longmont because this and this. But if I would have done that, then when I moved to Longmont, I would have had a bad experience on Longmont. That's just the cosmic forces of nature. That's what happens whenever you point your finger at one thing and say, this is not good, this is why I'm choosing this now, then that you're choosing becomes worse than what you point at. So it's better to just move on and speak of things in a positive way. So that's why I don't want to say anything negative about anything. But I feel like there's this door just being open to me, and it's all this like wisdom that always been around, that I always been connected to, I always knew about. But now I'm feeling, maybe because I'm getting older, maybe because I'm getting more sensitive now to stuff, that I'm starting to feel being able to explain it more, and also wanting to share it with people. I think a lot of times when we find out, spirituality, we tend to covet it. We tend to want it for ourselves because we think we're going to lose it. And if we share it with other people, we feel like we're going to have less of it, which is not true. Because the more you share, the more abundance you get. That's just one of the cosmetics in every religion, that's saying. So I would like to share these things with people and everything. So there's two paths that I love. And these two paths, these are two spiritual paths. One of them is the path of Wiccan. I love the path of Wiccan. I became a Wiccan when I was like 15, 16 years old. Obviously, that young, you can't really grasp it and everything. But I studied it. I was obsessed with it. I had all the books and I had the pentagram. I even have the pentagram tattooed on me. I had it in other parts of my body, the pentagram. But I was always obsessed with it. That's one of the paths. The second path is the Native American path. I discovered the Native American. I'm half Native American. I have Caribbean Indian. My grandmom is pure Taino Indian, but I'm also European too because my grandfather's Scottish and Irish, but he's from Spain. So I have the Spanish, Scottish, Irish, but I also have the native. I look indigenous, I look native, so I stick with the native. And when people see me, they see a person of color, they see a native person. So that's who I am. That's what I feel I am. So I feel like I always had this connection because and I'm not saying that everyone, no matter how white you are, no matter how dark you are, we all have a spiritual heritage. So I'm not saying I have this spiritual heritage just because I'm a person of color. White people have the Celtic thing. White people have the Scandinavian religions are beautiful actually, and there's so much spirituality in it. It tends to be more warlike than a lot of the paths, but there's still this beautiful spirituality. So we all could tap into our ancestral spirituality and everything. That being said, I feel like I always had this thing, but I feel as I'm getting older, I'm getting more so to it. But now that I live out in the plains, I feel like that's this other thing happening because there was this energy that I'm tapping into, this just I'm part of, and I feel that I'm lessening my humanity. What I mean by lessening my humanity, meaning, you think of the word humanity, and speaking it in the scope of the modern world and technology, it's not really a fanciful or cool thing, actually, because humanity is really kind of on the slippery slope right now, humanity. So, you know, losing my humanity to something spiritual, I'm not really losing as much because the things that are being promoted pertaining to our humanity is not healthy for us as humans. That's the paradox right there, and everything. But we still have this viable option, which is spirituality and nature that we could tap into. This easily available for us to grasp at any time we want. All we have to do is look inwardly. Like I said in my other video blog, look inwardly and we will find the wellspring of eternity, and within that we'll find true joy and serenity and peace and happiness and everything. So that's kind of the path I want and everything. But getting back to these two paths, so the Wiccan path and the Native American path. And ironically enough, if you think about the Wiccan path was founded by Gerald Gardner. Gerald Gardner was this nudist man that lived in the 1920s, and he was a very rich, came from a very wealthy, affluent family, and he traveled all over the world. So he went to America and he hung out with the Native Americans, but he also went to Africa, hung out with the African tribal leaders, the tribal people and everything. So he learned all this stuff about magic, and he came to this conclusion that magic, that spirituality is primal, and that religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are man-made religions made up by men to suppress men, and so he came back and he formulated what later became the Wicca everything. Then you have other people like Alexander, he came a little bit later. Then you have all these other people who more develop Wiccan into like a viable religion pertaining to a coven and being ritualistic, which all of that part, the coven part, the ritualistic part, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a conformist to any ideology, any type of ideology. This has to do with people all thinking alike. I'm not a fan of that. I'm more like an individual. Feel like I'm an individual person, so I'm more like stuff that has to do with the individual consciousness, and everything. So that being said, I feel that takes you back to the native teaching because Gerald Garner was influenced by the Native Americans. So a lot of the Wiccan that he started to develop it had influence, was very influenced by Native Americans and very influenced by African tribal religions and stuff, and everything. And like the native stuff, why I feel so connected to the native stuff because we all know that there were tribes that were very warlike. They were the tribes, But for the most part, a lot of the Native American tribes, they were tribes that went through generations while having war with other tribes. They were very peaceful tribes. They were really connected to the earth. And the things I love about these tribes is they had this total respect for the earth, and they had this love that they would utilize, respect towards the earth in order to build communities. And so they built all these communities, and they never overreached, and they never took advantage of the resources that they discovered because they saw it as a gift from God, the goddess, or the gods, and I think that's pretty amazing. And I feel that right now. I feel I feel more indigenous now than I ever did in my life, And there was times when I first moved to Boulder, I remember a long time ago, I met all these hippies, and I remember how they used to be like, "Whoa, you look like you're Indian. You look like you're this. You look like that." And they were so into all these different, native tribes and everything. And I'd be like, "Well, I am." At that time, I was just not really into my culture, because I don't know that much about my culture. I grew up with my mom in New York City, and she didn't talk about her mom, But then later on, I have found all these stories about my family and about like all these tribal people that lived in Puerto Rico and everything, Caribbean. And then I would meet these other Caribbean people, and they would be like, "Wow, you're very native Caribbean. You look like a Taino Indian." So it made me proud, but it didn't stick. But like now, I feel like I'm part of this viable option, this viable thing. And another thing that is kind of silly, but would prompt me to think about this stuff, is that I go to Rhythm Sanctuary, which is kind of this dance place where everyone dance crazy for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and everything. And there's a bunch of people who dress native. They really into the native. These people, I meet them, they really into Native Americans, and they all white people and everything. And I'm like, why do you have so obsessed with Native? Like I don't get that and everything. And then they look at me and they're so nice to me. I go, oh, they're nice to me because they think, rightfully so, but they think I'm a native, and everything. But I think it's funny. But the whole point that I'm making is that there's people that will love to be native. There's people that will love, and I'm not saying that that's a great thing or you should want to inspire to be. I'm not saying that. Like I said, we all have our heritage. Every person on earth has ancestral powers, have ancestrals that are tribal that they could tap into. It doesn't matter how white you are, doesn't matter how black you are. Like I said, everyone has that and everything. But somehow, because white people run the world, been running the world, these children of these white people, they don't really want to be associated with their forefather, with their parents. They don't. So they want to like latch on to like these indigenous tribes and everything and get inspiration. And I'm like, dude, you're Scottish, you have Celtic blood. Look into your Celtic tradition. That's a beautiful. Like my grandfather is Celtic, so I also have the Celtic in me from my Scottish, Irish grandfather who lived in Spain, actually, who came from Celtic tradition, who came from a very magical family himself, So you could tap into them no matter what you are. But the whole point is just tapping into the sacred, to the profane, tapping into the organic, And like if you think about it, like I talk a lot about Asperger's and autism and everything because I was diagnosed with autism when I was really young as low function autism. And as I got older, I became more functional, high functioning, and then it became Asperger's. But now it's called neurodivergent, which I find is a very, very selective word, and it just means that your neurons deviate from the norm. Basically, that's what neurodivergent means and stuff, which is kind of the reality of it. But if you think about it, if you think about it and compare it to like spirituality of nature, it doesn't exist, because it only exists in the scope of social behavioral patterns in society. So people who are socializing, people who want some form of normality through socializing in our made up kind of ideology type of utopian society, we need to function accordingly, and that accordingly is actually made up by the religious institutions of the world, and the religious and the political institutions and the educational systems of the world. So it's made up. It's something in order to it's kind of herd mentality, but it's made up for people to control other people and everything. So if you take a person that has autism, you put them in the country, they don't have autism in the country. Country people don't care about that. They just see them as a person walking around. They're odd. They're odd. They speak differently. They speak differently. They don't speak at all. Fine. They have a right to be silent. That's kind of there's this pervasive acceptance of other people in the country. I mean, we also know country people could be jerks too because they're just human and everything. But I think for the most part, it's this acceptance of just other humans. Like who are they to like judge other humans? Plus, they're around animals all the time, and they see how animals are in a lot of ways a lot better than humans and everything. So a lot of times they see it that way. But the thing is, it's like the tree falling in the forest. Can you hear a tree fall in the forest? It's the same thing. Like a person, this neurodivergent, a person has ADHD, a person is autistic, a person is schizophrenic, bipolar. They seem to have those pathologies when they live in nature because nature doesn't judge them based on those criteria. It just doesn't. Other humans do. And so the same thing with calling a person nerd. I use the word nerd a lot because I'm like a smart person. I read a lot, I study a lot, and I always consider myself a nerd. But I always had this problem when people don't call me a nerd because of the way I look, because people think I'm cool because I have tattoos and I'm punky and I'm a person of color, all this stupid stuff. And the fact remains that I am a nerd, because for the simple fact that I get along with nerds when I meet other nerds, and I talk to them, I'm like equal to them. So that's how I know that I am a nerd. But that doesn't mean that's what I am. That's just a label that I put on myself to just try to give someone an inclination of what they're gonna expect from me when I start talking, because I'm gonna jump into this narrow subject and I'm gonna know a lot about it and be very learned in it, and stuff. And my mental faculties is gonna be overstimulated, and cognitively I'm gonna be able to explain things that people don't understand and everything. But that is a label that is a person that lives in nature, it won't be a nerd. Like I see people walking around that I'd be like, oh, it looks like a nerd girl, but they won't be considered that because they live in nature, and they live in the country, and so people won't label them that. Of course, that could happen, but for the most part, people that's just a person. But as soon as you go into the city, there's all these rules and regulations that we gotta abide by, and we have to follow in order to have a conducive, happy existence, living amongst other humans in this toxic environment, which it is pretty toxic, cities and stuff. So then that's when the rightful place of where you belong justifies. And the only reason why people make up labels, and the only reason why people point fingers and say you're this and you're that, because it's tied into our security. Like if we don't want to, people are so afraid of being insecure. And I mean that literally, people are afraid to be insecure. People want some form of security because people feel security is tied into normality. And then more security or the more normal they're going to be. People in the end of the day really want to be normal because they equate not being normal with being an outsider. People don't want to be an outsider. People have abandonment issues. People want to be an insider all the time. That's what people desire the most in American and Western countries and stuff, more so than anywhere else in the world and stuff. And so people label people because people are, well, this person's an odd nerd, so that person belongs to this group, and this person is a crazy black person business and a gang. He belongs to the gang people. And who knows what that black person could be a preacher, a minister from a church and stuff. But people like to do that, label them and put people in their little corners and everything. But that's a very, very city thing. That's a thing that pertains to the city. It's a city mentality, and like survival of the fittest, like our group has to be on the top of the chain and everything. And that's where the like yuppies come in. And the most notorious group out of all the groups in the world is the yuppie. The yuppie is like this weird parasitic kind of entity. And I'm not saying that they're evil or they're bad. I'm just saying the behavior, buying up these neighborhoods, gentrifying them, and just like making the women dress a certain way, like wearing tight clothes, and that society is so weird because like women are treated really bad in yuppie society. People don't notice it, like how they have to dress in order to get a mate, and how they have to behave in order to be recognized or even to be taken serious. And a lot of time they're not even taken being serious; they being sexualized because the men in this culture and that culture, the yuppie culture, is a very new type of man, that wasn't even around 30 years ago, but it's this new man which is works out into like energy drinks, into like, um brewing their own beer. I don't know, it's really hard to explain what I'm saying, but those type of people, they could let's hope for everyone could change if they want, but I'm just talking about the state that those people are in now. It's a very, very kind of this masculine state of dominant, of privilege, and also like the people who suffer the most is not really the people of color, because the people of color are gonna live and they're gonna do what they're gonna do anyway and stuff, and be happy and find happiness in other avenues, and everything. But the people that suffering are actually the women in these groups. They're the ones that suffering the most. It's kind of sad, and so I see it like everywhere and everything, and just like, and even when I talk to some of these women, like they like don't have any faith in themselves at all. And the reason why, because it's not promoted to have faith in themselves. It's in their society is promoted for them to like be sexy, to wear action, even though they're not going to the gym, they have to wear these tights and they have to show every part of their body. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying that no one has the right to be what they want. If a person feels good about their body and want to dress like that, that's fine. But the reason why is to get a mate for a lot of these people, or to get someone interested in them, because they don't feel like they have anything to offer men, as far as conversation wise, as far as just presenting something to these men that would intrigue them. They don't feel like they have anything to offer, so they go, well, I have a nice body, I have a pretty face, I have long pretty blonde hair, so let me just wave this in front of them and maybe they will bite. And everything. So it's really sad, kind of. I see it every day in Boulder, because Boulder is the mecca of abuse for yuppie white women. Is Boulder, just how they set up, just how they have to behave in order to get a mate, just how they behave just to be popular. They have to do all this. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have these people. I know I'm going off the tangent. I didn't mean to go off, but that have been something I've been wanting to write about for a while. I wanted to talk about for a while and everything, because no one ever talks about it. People just see yuppies, like, oh, they're fucking yuppies. Who cares about them? They're all in this group and everything. But there's actually something going on. There's actually a toxicity in that culture. We know that. Every culture has some form of like toxicity in it, but there's definitely a pervasive toxicity in it. But there's also an abuse of women in that culture and everything, which is kind of sad, and everything, because people should be treated for what they have in their mind and in their soul, not in their bodies, because those women, they're gonna end up, losing their beauty when they get older. Everyone does, there comes a time when you're not gonna be beautiful forever, and then they end up being alone, and they're not desirable, because what is being promoted is youth. In that yuppie culture is youth. That's everything is youth. Elderly people don't matter. Like, they become over 40 years old, they don't really matter anymore. They become like these weird middle-aged people who go to music and food and beer festivals. They're not valid anymore. And the young yuppie culture is really a messed up thing. But I mean, that's how it is when you run in the world right now. When media, like running all the cities and all the subcultures and all the fashion now, it's gonna be a downfall, but it's at the hands of these women, and it's just I don't like abuse, I don't like marginalization, and I think that that's like a real um thing. It's kind of a sad thing, but people are like fuck that, fuck your beats, whatever, and everything. I don't feel like that. I feel like no one should be everyone should be treated nice. Anyway, I went way to the left. I gotta like watch this video blog and see where I got lost and where I have to start again to make another video blog.